Welcome everyone to Breaking Barriers and Leveraging the Latest Developments in AI Technology. Today I'm joined by an amazing panel of speakers. I'll go ahead and pass it off to Chris. You can start to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Chris. I'm part of the customer solutions team here at Safe Software, and obviously here to demonstrate a couple of AI use cases with FME, both on the form side as well as on the flow side today. Dale, I'll hand it off to you.
My name is Dale. I'm one of the co-founders of SAFE, and I'm here largely to cheerlead and to think about what all the implications of this amazing technology are. I hope you're going to enjoy the show today. Over to you, Dmitri.
I'm scenario creation analyst at SAFE, and my role is today is to show you a few scenarios where AI is a part of FME workflow.
Yeah.
Don?
Yeah, so I'm Sean Murray. I'm the other co-founder, and we're super excited to do this today. One of the things that you'll see is we're an integration platform. So just as we go through, I'll ask Christian and Dmitri to talk about all the different models. Like literally, you're going to walk away and be able to integrate with thousands and thousands of different models and different AI components. In the past, it was OpenAI, and today you're going to see some others. And obviously, for an organization, the challenge is how can you embrace all these AI tools? And well, there's no better place than FME. And so we're going to show some of that today. And because you can't buy a tool that integrates with one thing. There's too many things going on. And so, so sit back and enjoy the show. It really is a show, and it's really amazing. So
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, just quickly, if you're new to Livestorm and have any audio issues, you can click that help button on the bottom left for 4 simple steps. Share your reactions with us during the webinar with that react button in the bottom middle. We have a poll coming up very shortly, so keep an eye on that polls tab. And then, of course, if you have any questions throughout, please do drop those in that questions tab. We'll have time at the end for questions. And yeah, it's great to scroll through and see where everyone's tuning in from in the chat, so keep letting us know that there too. Perfect. And I'll pass the screen sharing baton over to Chris to get started on our agenda.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and now's a good timing, actually. If I can get our presenters to turn off their cameras, we'll save on some bandwidth.
Okay, so what we're going to be starting off with, after we've gone through that, is just a quick introduction of the FME platform. Then we'll start to move into more of the product updates and trends we've been seeing. So there has been a lot of time that has passed since the last webinar, obviously, and OpenAI has shifted a little bit along with Azure OpenAI. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We've also introduced a new capability to integrate with AWS Bedrock, which is Amazon's offering of the AI integration services. So we can touch on how we're able to connect to that. So you're going to notice there's a couple of themes with this webinar, and we'll go over those in just a couple of slides. Then we will round things off by talking a little bit more about the co-authoring workspace experience and how you can leverage AI technologies not only to help your data integration workflows, but to help you build those workflows as well. So there's a couple of perspectives that you'll see, and hopefully this will allow you to walk away with a few ideas on how to leverage this. Dmitri will then take over and talk about FME and AI integration scenarios, and he has a lot of very interesting ones cooked up. So we'll kind of tease that as we get into the webinar, and he'll take things away and go into a little bit more of a deep dive on the actual workspaces themselves. And lastly, we'll finish off with resources and conclusions, and of course, a Q&A period. So if you have any questions as the webinar is going on, please do put it in the chat panel, or the questions panel rather. We will address those at the end as best we can. And if we can't get to it at the very end, we will absolutely follow up with you via email. We love to get all of your opinions, so it is very valuable when you do engage with us during these webinars. So I think we actually have our first poll here. Elizabeth, I'm not sure if you want to kick things off with this one.
Yeah, sounds good. So I've just launched that under the polls tab, and we'd love to know what are your biggest challenge or biggest challenges in leveraging AI technology in your work. So you can select more than one option if more than one stands out to you there, and we'll give everyone a moment to place their vote. Looks like there's a couple leaders so far.
Yeah, it's a pretty even split between those top three.
But the rate of change is hard for us as humans to keep on top of. Yeah. Oh, but it just fell to second place.
Yeah, the top two are really fighting for first place there. So clearly those are, primary ones. Integrating AI into existing systems and keeping up with the rapid advancements. All right, thanks everyone for
on
joining.
the integrating front anyway, I'd guess.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you for your feedback there. That's great to see how everyone's taking this in their own organization. So we can definitely take some of that feedback away and do our best to help alleviate some of those pain points with integrating it into existing systems. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into all of the content of the webinar. So today we're going to be talking obviously about AI advancements to drive innovation and efficiency in your organization. So the goal of this is really going to be to give you a few new ideas on how you can better leverage AI in your data workflows or to supplement your authoring experience. We are obviously Safe Software, the creators of the FME Enterprise Integration Platform, which is consisting of 2 technologies. We're going to be seeing the entire gamut today. So on the left-hand side, you have FME Form, and this is the environment where you build and run your data workflows. You do so with readers, which are those yellow objects, transformers, which are tools that actually do the work and allow you to integrate your data, do validations, join data sets, you name it, we have a transformer for it. And then on the other end, you have writers, which allow you to push your data to the end system. Once you're satisfied with those workflows, you can publish them to FME Flow or FME Flow hosted, and that allows you to automate it using FME Flow automations, things like schedules, running things in a data stream if you have real-time data processing needs. And of course, all of these things can be integrated with AI directly in your workflow if that is an area of interest for you. So we'll be seeing the entire platform today, and obviously a little bit more background on the FME platform is that we are the largest ecosystem specifically for geospatial data, but that doesn't mean you have access to, or that doesn't mean you don't have access to any non-spatial systems. You have the equivalent across the board, so we can support both spatial, non-spatial systems. And the key theme that we'll be focusing on is actually on the bottom right-hand side, and that is the code optional extendability. So FME out of the box supports over 450 systems that can be anything from a flat file like a CSV or a DWG file, all the way to the major databases and web services. What you can do with the code optional extendability is actually access any REST API, SOAP API, or use things like Python or R to access additional systems. So we'll be touching on those concepts a little bit more in this webinar. And that's really what's going to enable you to connect to even more systems. So obviously you can do a lot of your workflows with all of the pre-built native transformers, but if you have additional capabilities that are not quite in the product and you need to access things outside of FME's native transformers, you can supplement that by using those Python callers or HTTP callers to access those systems, and then use FME transformers for the rest of the way. So you get kind of the best of both worlds. We started in the GIS and CAD space, and over the years, we've continued to add new formats. And as trends have kind of changed, we've kind of followed suit. So obviously, we're now into the 2023-2024 space, which is shifting towards generative AI and cloud native formats. So we're continuing on this generative AI topic, and we'll be showing off a couple of cool new features today. So I mentioned that we're going to be talking on a couple of different themes here, and the first one is really going to be that authoring AI experience. So this is going to be leveraging AI to build FME workflows in FME form. The second component is really going to be taking a step back and thinking, how can you leverage this to do something with administrating your FME Flow environment? How can you leverage AI and FME Flow automations to monitor your system performance? Because this is something that could be a rather manual task, and you can absolutely automate this using FME and leverage AI technologies to do things like scouring log files, check for any bottlenecks or performance improvements, and then act according to the results that you get back from your AI. The third theme that we have is really the user perspective. So just because you're consuming FME products doesn't mean you have to be a well-versed FME author or admin. You could simply just be someone who's consuming a report or a dashboard. And that could be work that was leveraged by an author to build that workflow. So this kind of allows you to round out the entire story where AI may be used behind the scenes and the users may not even know that it's actually supplementing the response or the results that they're seeing on their screen. We kind of touched on this at the very beginning with our informal discussion, but AI is obviously a space that is moving extremely quickly. This is our third iteration of the AI webinar series, and there's no doubt that we will have future webinars as well, because as Dmitri mentioned, we actually probably have enough content for about 2 other sessions just on the AI capabilities that are available today. This is a moving target. In 4 more months, it's going to be completely different. So we're going to have, again, more content to release, but it's just to know that the AI space is moving quickly and that using a platform like FME allows you to move with the technology trends as they progress and get better. FME workspaces are obviously very reusable and very easy to customize and tweak as technology changes. So this allows you to update your model sets as needed using things like publish parameters, which we'll touch on in a little bit here in our demos. So yeah, FME serves to bridge the world of AI. We obviously give you the capabilities of a lot of native transformers built directly into the product. There are native AI transformers available both on the FME Hub, which is essentially a free marketplace to download custom transformers that were either created by Safers ourselves, our partner network, or even users like yourself. But we also ship some native ones as well. So things like AWS recognition, AI and ML services are obviously available on there as well. And most of these are API-based services, so they are essentially delivered through the hub. So that allows you to update the APIs as soon as those API specs change. So a little bit easier than updating the platform entirely. So we'll get into the product updates and trends section. So on the right-hand side, we have a little bit of a video going on, and this is going to demonstrate the OpenAI ChatGPT connector updates. So we've gone ahead and improved the parameter layout. We're leveraging something that is new to 23 and beyond, and that's conditionally visible parameters. So as I select that service provider, you can see that the authentication parameters are associated specifically with the service that is selected. So this is unique to OpenAI, as this is available both on Azure OpenAI as well as the OpenAI service itself. Similarly, what we've done is done that with the chat history as well. So when you're first creating your ChatGPT instance, you obviously need that system prompt. But if you're feeding in a chat history, that is already baked into the chat history for you, so it'll disable that. So it just makes it a little bit easier to feed in some existing history and gets rid of the need for a system prompt if you already have that context in your chat history. We've also updated the default model to ChatGPT, or to GPT-4 rather, updated some documentation and added a request timeout parameter, because obviously as people start to use AI services more, they're feeding more and more data in large quantities and large volumes. So requests can actually take a little bit longer. So that's all baked into that advanced parameter, and it just cleans up the layout a little bit. So we'll start talking about our first flow use case now, and that is going to be automation and AI. And I'll actually get into a demo in just in this next section here. So the first goal of what we're going to be talking about here is we want to monitor system performance with automations and AI. I don't want to have to monitor all my log files and check through all these things to make sure that all these workspaces are working correctly. If there's any performance bottlenecks, I want to have FME notify me, and I can leverage something like an AI service to scour all of the log files. It can check for any slowdowns or any blockers, and that will help me to improve my system health and performance overall. So obviously one of the blockers here is that log files are extremely detailed, and that's great, but occasionally that can make them a little bit difficult to read because they're just a little bit wordy in the sense that there's a lot of text kind of coming at you, and it can be hard to spot out any outliers in those log files. So the key to this one is going to be using the API-driven workflow with the FME flow. We're going to use the V4 REST API in this case, and this is going to be something that's available on the dashboard section if you're familiar with FME Flow's dashboards. So you can bake this directly into your FME Flow environment, or of course you could send it to yourself as an email. You could really deliver the results of the HTML however you'd like it, but in this case, we'll keep it on that dashboards page. So just give me 1 second here to switch the screens. And we'll be looking at this one. Oh, and we have a rejected one. Okay, so what is going to be going on here? I'm obviously in FME form, and this is, again, that authoring environment where you can build and run your workflows. So I'll just walk you through a couple of key steps in this workflow. The first thing that we're going to be doing here is going and using that REST API to grab the last 1,000 jobs for the week. So this could be something that you loop through if you're working on a very high volume flow instance and you need to grab more of these. You can obviously loop back and grab the next 1,000 and next 1,000 and so on. In this case, it's a very low volume flow instance, so I don't really need to reach out that often. I know it's going to be captured in that first 1,000 batch. But what we'll do is grab all 1,000 of those jobs, kind of break those off into the statistics for the job. So we'll check for CPU time, percentage, memory usage, as well as what time the job was actually kicked off. And we're just going to concatenate that into a basic JSON message. So it'll look very similar to this, where it's just basically we're feeding in the job ID, some basic stats about the job itself, and then we'll build that into, if I go to here, more of a overall summary of the jobs from the last week. So this is going to be taking all of the averages, the minimum, maximum, mean of all of the jobs for the week, and then the jobs section of this JSON will be all of the actual specific jobs themselves. Go over here. So that got a little broken when I changed the bookmark around. And we're going to feed that directly into an OpenAI prompt. So what we're going to do is say to ChatGPT, or to GPT-4 in this case, below is the last week's worth of FME Flow job submissions, and we want to detect any outliers that may be causing a disruption to the engine availability or something that is perhaps just a bottleneck to the system. So this is where we're going to feed in all of the past week's worth of statistics. We're going to take those averages, the min, mean, and max for all of those job statistics as well, and we're going to feed that into an OpenAI response. All we're going to ask back for is just a CSV with the job IDs so that we can actually go out and grab all of those individual log files and submit a second request. So that's essentially what's going on here. Oh, I got a little messed up there too. There we go. So that's essentially what's happening in that next bookmark is we're parsing the response to get all the log files from that CSV that we've asked back for. Of course, it doesn't necessarily give you exactly how you want it formatted every time. But once we have that information, we do a second HTTP request to the Flow REST API to get the log files, which is a very simple call. And then we're going to feed that directly into the next prompt. So this will take into account any job warnings, any timestamps that can indicate a bottleneck. Say if you're reaching out to a database and it's taking a long time to connect, this is something that could notify you because typically that'll be indicated by the log informed timestamps. So essentially that's what we're doing here. We're asking, again, back in a specific format. We'll ask back to get the warnings and errors, bottlenecks, features per second, and kind of the reason if it failed back as JSON so we can format that as HTML. Go into FME Flow. And so this is something that you could use an automation to run in real time if you would like. You could have this submit every time a new job is submitted. So you could have this run to check every single job that's being submitted, or you could do it more in a batch mode. So I have it actually set up as a basic schedule. You can scroll up down here. And I've published this to FME Flow. Again, this is the automation platform where you can take those jobs and allow it to run in an automation or in a schedule. So in this case, I just want it to run every Wednesday so we can check the past week's worth of history. And so this is going to write to just that dashboards area, which is available on the jobs page, just on that dashboards there. I have this one preloaded here, and it's just a basic HTML file at the end of the day. So this is all the information that we've sent to OpenAI to get analyzed for any bottlenecks, warnings, or errors that were detected in those job files. Because again, I don't really want to have to read through all of these log files on a weekly basis. I could use AI to do this for me. And so this indicates all the jobs for failure, the reason for failure rather. It gives me some potential bottlenecks that I might want to look into for this field operations job. And it'll give me any warnings or errors. This is actually very helpful if you're working with any databases or systems that require password changes, because again, that information will show up in a log file and it'll be a good flag for you to say, catch that error out of the log file before the database connection fails and the job fails essentially. So it just gives you an idea of how you can leverage AI in FME Flow to automate your administration tasks. Okay. So yeah, just to recap what we saw here, this is leveraging AI technology to automate manual review efforts. And this is something that you can actually bake directly into FME Flow using those dashboard reports. And that's just basic HTML that is available for preview on the Flow instance. So yeah, again, you can see that it'll indicate any potential bottlenecks. In this case, it's again, that low volume server instance. So not very many jobs going through. So the bottlenecks are actually quite small in terms of 17 seconds and 295 milliseconds. But if you were working on a higher volume Flow instance and you had a lot of jobs being submitted and something was holding you back, this is something that can help you to detect those issues. Okay, we'll take a step into FME Forms area now, and this is some additional capabilities that we've recently added. And this is going to be AWS Bedrock and FME. So we'll take a look at the next demo here. And previously, over the past two webinars, we focused basically solely on Azure OpenAI and OpenAI, just because we had access to those systems. But now we also have access to AWS Bedrock. In the future, when it's available in Canada and actually available here, we can use the Google Gemini service as well. So that's something that we will be looking into and adding functionality for in the future. But for now, we'll focus on AWS Bedrock, and this accesses their API in a slightly different manner than OpenAPI and OpenAI rather, and Azure OpenAI. This uses the Python API, whereas OpenAI and Azure OpenAI were based on the REST API. So this is that theme of extendability and code optional components. Break this into taking a look in FME Form 2024. So this is a slightly different layout. The reason that we're in FME Form is because we actually shipped the libraries that are required for this Python API already, and we had to upgrade it for FME 24. So if you have the betas, you can try this. We'll make it available on the FME Hub very soon. Otherwise, it will only be available moving forward from FME 24 once you've upgraded. So what we've done is, again, created a basic custom transformer here. And again, this will be available on the FME Hub in a little while here, but it's just using some basic authentication parameters. So we have the AWS key ID as well as the security access ID. Much like all the other AWS transformers, if you are familiar with them, you select your region. In this case, we're happy with US West 2. And we've preloaded a couple of models here. So one thing that we'll be touching on is how AWS and Azure are switching more to like a marketplace for their models. And we'll take a couple of looks at some screenshots there. But essentially, these are 4 separate providers. We have one from Anthropic, AI21 Labs, as well as Amazon. And I am blanking on the last one, but it'll come back to me once I open up the bookmark. So we have a couple of those preloaded there. And you can obviously edit this custom transformer and add more, because in terms of authentication, that's all the same. The only difference for each of these instances is how the JSON is actually formatted and the request is sent. So we'll ask for a basic prompt. In this case, one of the demos that AWS had was asking for who was the 40th president of the United States. And we can see that we'll get the response back as completions. And Ronald Reagan was the 40th president of the United States. It gives his term. But let's actually open up that custom transformer here. All right, so what we have is a couple of different Python callers, and we've named them according to the model that it's accessing. And I'll touch on the key components of what's happening here in a couple of slides, but essentially this is leveraging a Python API to access the OpenAI, or rather the AWS Bedrock service. So again, we're using that library that's shipped with FME, and that is the Botto3 library. So that's gonna be leveraged in here. In terms of the authentication piece, which I'll just point out here, we're grabbing all the access key from published parameters and preparing it for a prompt. All that is going to be standard across all of the models used on the AWS Bedrock service. The only difference here is going to be the body. All of these will be unique to each model that you're getting access to. So in this case, I'm looking at the Anthropic Claude. And so this one will have a specific format. You'll see that it asks for a prompt, and it has to have that human aspect there. And if I compare that to the AI21 Jurassic, the prompt is here where it just says prompt and it gets straight into it. So all of these will be formatted slightly differently. It's all documented extremely well. So if you do use the AWS environment and you want to connect to a different service, you can simply copy and paste this and change the body part, and the rest of it should work pretty well. So this is where we're taking the best of both worlds. I'm not a Python expert by any means. I'm using the Python API to get the data to the AI service, and then I'm using all of the FME transformers to do the rest of the legwork for me. So this is where the code optional extendability comes in handy, because I don't have any intention on learning how to use Python to do string replacing or JSON flattening. I'm sure it's very easy, but I'm already familiar with the tools in FME. So I'm going to leverage the knowledge that I have to make my workflow a little bit faster to actually build and maintain down the line. So that is obviously an option that you have if you need to access any additional services. So with that in mind, you have virtually limitless integration possibilities. We obviously pre-built a lot of these connectors to AWS and Azure, but you can also connect to any of the other services that you may need access to. And this obviously is not specific to AI. You can do this with any business systems as well. Our goal is obviously to strive to make it easier to connect to these systems more and more than ever before. But of course, at the rate of change, we can't necessarily keep up with all of them. We might not have access to all of them like we do in the case of Google Gemini. So if you have access already and they have good documentation, we can either help you build that or provide you with resources to build it yourself. Okay, so the code optional workflow again here is just one way to enable easy, reusable integrations with native transformers and various APIs. So using the REST and SOAP-based API, that is accessed through the HTTP caller transformer, and that's a great example for the OpenAI ChatGPT connector and all of the other OpenAI connectors that are available on the FME Hub. For the AWS Bedrock one, that's accessed from Python using the Python caller or creator. We'll just point out a couple of key features that help to make this easier. Again, those user parameters for things like authentication parameters or the body, as well as getting the response and exposing it as an attribute so that you can actually use it in the rest of the workflow. So this is where you do get the best of both worlds. Again, you don't have to be a Python expert. You just have to be able to kind of glue all the pieces together to get an output that you're comfortable with working using native FME transformers. And that's what we demonstrated in that demo a little bit earlier. So again, using the best of both worlds here, we can use all the basic Python that we need to get by, and the rest of the way we can use FME transformers to supplement the rest of the workflow. When it comes to creating your own custom transformer, we have a lot of resources that help you with that. There are a lot of great functionalities that allow your custom transformer parameters to be a rich GUI environment. So again, we showcase those conditional visibility parameters, but you can also do things like groups or use specific parameter types. There's a lot of concepts that are available on published parameters. So I have a kind of just a resources page if you do want to adventure and create your own. And these can be shared on the FME Hub. If you want to share it globally, that is totally doable. If you want to share it just specifically with your organization, that's also accessible as well. So you can kind of choose how much you want to share it out. And so again, what we're talking about a little bit earlier in the FME Forum demo is that AWS and Azure are switching to a little bit more of a model provider marketplace. So with AWS specifically, this is already available. You have the model access, and this kind of gives you a couple of different foundation model providers, and you select which one. Again, all of the actual body requests will be slightly different. That's going to be consistent across the Azure environment as well. So you can see on the left-hand side, there are certain collections, another word for providers. They have some similar ones, but obviously these are going to expand over time because these two services want you to leverage their authentication to access the service within it. And this leads us to something called Hugging Face as well, because obviously Azure and AWS are not the only AI model providers or services available. There's something called Hugging Face, and this gives you access to about 500,000 models that are available here. So again, you can look into any of these, and if they are accessible from the Python API or if they have a REST API, perhaps they're accessible through R. All of these can be downloaded and accessed in an FME workflow as well. Obviously, it'll always be dependent on how to format the request and any dependencies that need to be associated with it, like a Python library, for example. So that's a good one to keep in mind. So yeah, this is integrating with any AI service provider is already doable with the OpenAI and Azure OpenAI. Amazon Bedrock is now available, and we'll get to Google Gemini once we have access to it. And so those will kind of be the top 3 AI service providers, and most likely one of your organization is using one of those services, so you will likely have access to it. But this just gives you ideas of how you can leverage these services that are available to you to do things like automating troubleshooting, doing things like monitoring system performance, or generating summaries for report. So we've talked about the AWS and OpenAI stuff so far, and that's all been driven by largely all of our great user base. And this is where your opinion greatly matters. Keep talking to us, keep sharing what you want to connect to. You can use the FME community ideas page to share these kind of infrequent thoughts and ideas that you might have. So please do share your ideas on there. This will help us to add even more connectors on the FME platform. Okay, let's get into co-authoring workspaces. So this is that both the authoring theme and the user theme. So what we'll start to look at is exploring a couple of new ideas for using FME, or AI rather, outside of FME. So one of the great ideas that I think we've leveraged this and shown this a couple of times in past webinars, but we just love to reiterate that you don't necessarily have to use AI explicitly in an FME workflow. You can use AI outside to actually help you build that workflow. So say you're scoping out a new project, you can post into a ChatGPT prompt and say, I'm trying to do this specific project and I'm brand new to FME. Can you help me get an idea of all the requirements and also give me a time estimate on how long it'll take to get up and running and trained up on all these things? So this is where AI is fantastic. Obviously, it'll pull together all of those resources for you. In a sense, it's almost like your own personal consultant or product consultant, which will give you a starting point with how to get started with all of these new resources. So we can list all of the requirements, give you an idea of how to build the automation process and the steps that you need to consider there, as well as give you a time estimate if you can give a level of expertise that you're familiar with the FME platform. So this is where AI can, again, be very helpful. We can develop this as a Mind GPT so it becomes available to the wider public, and kind of start to train it more specifically on our training data and give rough timelines on how long it takes to get up and running with specific services. But this is a great use case outside of FME to leverage AI services. Another one is to use AI for troubleshooting and debugging. So this is not to replace our support team by any means, but if you're looking for a quick way to debug any Python errors or random FME errors that you're popping into, throw it into an AI prompt or your chatbot and see what you get back. It might actually lead you down the right path. So in my case, building that AWS Python or AWS Bedrock connector using the Python creator, I'm not a Python developer by any means, like I said. So I use this quite a bit, and it actually helped me get past a lot of issues. I still had to look on things like Stack Exchange to get specific error codes. It wasn't necessarily able to pull those out for me, but it led me down the right path to get the thing working. And the last one that we have here, and Dmitri will go into a lot more detail about this, is for learning and skill development. So again, you can kind of use the best of both worlds here, where you can use a chatbot to help you build an HTML page if you're not familiar with HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. If you don't want to build all of that or learn how to develop all of those skills, you can ask an AI bot to help you build an HTML page with, say, containers that are drop-downs that give you a description. They should be clickable, and when you're clicking on the map, it should reflect what's clicked in the table. Again, I didn't want to go ahead and research all of these capabilities on W3 Schools, so I just asked the AI bot. It put it all together for me, including all the sample data for a useful example. And I've used this now in an FME workflow because I simply just have to replace the table values with the values of an FME workspace. So this is where you can, again, take the best of both worlds, use ChatGPT for its strengths or your equivalent chatbot to help you create a report or an output that you're looking for, and then use FME to feed in the values of your actual data. Okay, so at this point, I will hand things over to Dmitri, and he'll obviously be walking through a little bit more of that HTML example, but yeah, I'll hand it off to you at this point, Dmitri.
So as I said, what I'm presenting today is how we can make OpenAI a part of transformation, and I tried all kinds of different transformations during our first webinar in which I participated. I showed these 4 scenarios. You can watch that webinar or read about them in the blog, which I will share later. Today, I will talk about 5 other scenarios. One is where we can transform text or 3D objects, how we can analyze workspace, how we can complete imagery with holes. In this case, I take orthoimagery. How we can write batch files like Windows bat files or bash scripts. And then I will talk about my geoart AI, probably the most beautiful thing I made in my life. So this one, well, I tried to, write something, just a text, and create a 3D feature from it. It's at this point, if you go to Hugging Face, about which Chris already told a few words, you will find some models that can transform your text input into 3D models, but those models are in their infancies. They're not that great yet. So I tried to do it myself. Of course, there is pretty limited capabilities on the OpenAI side. But if you ask ChatGPT to write a prompt for you, maybe this is important to note. Don't write your own prompt. Always ask ChatGPT to write prompts for you. Just throw in ideas, what you want to see, what you don't want to see, and it will write for you a perfect prompt that will work better, which you then can refine according to your requirements. So I asked ChatGPT to write me a prompt for creating images of these wrought iron fences, like European fences of maybe 19th century, and that's what I've got. A few examples, and those who know FME, you know how you can easily transform that into a 3D geometry by setting node data on white and then tracing the black and getting some objects. And here is a short video where I did exactly that. I actually use portrace. It's a command line utility for tracing, which works better for this kind of objects than our vectorization tools embedded in FME. So you can see the fence here. I placed it just outside my house, and across the street is just a simple face with, again, an image generated by ChatGPT for me. So it's a typical St. Petersburg facade. So here it is. So I think it worked pretty well. So the next one is an interesting, well, here FME is not a part, or OpenAI is not a part of the workflow, but it's an interesting one. You can make a screenshot of your workspace and then just submit it to ChatGPT or OpenAI API and ask what this workspace does, and you can get pretty good results. You can compare, show that to your colleague and to ChatGPT and compare the results. Yesterday night, I made a service which does exactly this. So here is the service. You can try it, but I won't run it right now because it takes from 1 to 2 minutes. But if you just drop an image like I just showed you, or something like this one, or even this one without any annotations, you will get a report like this. So you can click on the image to see closer and overview and so on. It describes all the transformers for you, what they do, all the readers and all the writers, and even why you would need such a workspace. So it's pretty neat, I think. And this HTML and JavaScript and CSS, I didn't write a single line of that. So ChatGPT did all that for me. Here, you can see, for example, that the workspace that I just showed you, I will read you. The purpose of this workspace is likely to create a searchable, structured database from unstructured image data by extracting descriptions, tags, and titles using AI. The process makes it possible to organize and search through the images based on their content, which could be useful for various applications such as digital asset management, content discovery, or even SEO optimization for image-rich websites. So just from that screenshot, we got all this, and that's actually correct. And that screenshot is maybe a teaser of next webinar scenario that I would like to show. The next one is where we can fill orthoimagery with something. So we can make a hole, and in this case, I use zoning for the city of Coquitlam, the layer of zoning, and I just deleted one of the zones, made a hole in the city, and then asked ChatGPT to fill it. So I made a few experiments. You can see all my scenarios have this line, read more here. I created a series of articles about everything. You can just click and go there and read all the details. But you can see some of the results that I got. So for example, instead of this park, I would like to build a huge high-rise, of course. And you can see that even the shadows are lined up, well, pretty nicely, almost correct. The rest of the image. And on the animation below, I just took a small block from the city and asked to place a castle inside. And we will see something about castle in my next video. So that works quite well, although it uses Dall-E E2 model, which is not as great as E3. So if they do that for E3, we can expect much higher realism and quality. So this one is interesting. I will just run this video and go over it while it is running. So I saved some of those castles from Data Inspector. As you can see, they have these image fetcher names. So what can I do here? I can specify the path to this folder and specify the file patterns. So in this case, something would start with image and ends with PNG. And then I ask, rename each file matching the specified file pattern by setting the name to Coquitlam Castle and adding a sequential number to it. So you see, that's what I would like to rename those files. I run, so I slightly sped up this process in this video, so it takes a little bit longer, but look at the names. The names, they change. Coquitlam Castle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So now let's deal with those TIFF files. As you can see, I just created a racing track there. And then this time, I also asked to make a backup. So again, let me just read you what I'm going to do. Rename each file matching the specified file pattern by adding the underscore and file creation date in the format year, month, day to its original name. So again, so we should see a folder, a backup folder created in a sec. Here, the backup, and you can see all the track file names were changed. And this is my backup. And now I would like, for example, to delete those files. Again, I will specify my mask and type delete all files containing 2023 in their name, run. And it looks like magic because how it even knows what to do. But let's go inside the workspace and see a little bit how it all works. So action prompt, here you see this parameter action prompt. Here what we write, what we would like to do. Just a short phrase. But behind the scenes, this is a part of a much bigger prompt. So let's have a look at this one. I'm not going to read it all, but it gives very detailed instructions how to create that batch file, and action prompt is just a small part of the entire prompt. So again, as I said, don't try prompts yourself. Ask ChatGPT or OpenAI to write prompts for you. And now we can go to our next slide. So as I said, that's probably the most beautiful thing I ever created in my life. But in this case, it is for this webinar, it's more important how and not what. So I've got this idea during the holidays between Christmas and New Year, and I just, couldn't wait until, those holidays would end to just, jump to the computer and try this idea. So basically, we can click on a map, and that will get us, coordinates. And then we will specify a few other things, such as what artistic style we would like to choose. I can actually go to that service. Here it is. So we can select a few options like how realistic, or maybe watercolor, or oil painting we would like to create, what environment we would like to see, historic, residential, industrial, season, time of day, and weather. And from those parameters, we create a prompt. Here it is. I'll jump to the next slide here. So this on the left side is a very formal prompt that I submit to ChatGPT. And what I get back is very picturesque description of location at those coordinates. And they don't, ChatGPT does not, cannot create exact picture for that location, but it can imagine how it looks like, based on its vast knowledge and huge archives of images that it saw while it was trained. So, and you can see that my prompt is very dry, very formal, whereas ChatGPT writes pretty poetic description. Lightning forks across the canvas in jagged streaks of brilliant white and electric blue, illuminating the water momentarily with a spectral glow. The thunderstorm above is a chaotic dance of swirling dark clouds, painted with a blend of cobalt gray and black, their undersides occasionally lit by the storm flashes, and so on, right? So we thought that, AI would replace us at boring operations, but it looks like it's pretty creative. So I can go back to this, and you see all those icons. I can click on them, and they will show me a small picture. So that prompt created this painting for Norway. I don't know anybody from Norway. Does this look like Norway or no? But if you go back to where we live here in Vancouver, it looks very, very convincing. So, for example, close to the place where I live, it's a garbage collection day. You can see, and it looks really, really good, very convincing. Or, for example, Sydney on Vancouver Island. I love this place. So very, very convincing. I was on that island many, many times. So anyhow, how I did all that, I asked ChatGPT to create prompt for me, then to create HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for me. So all I have to do is just put that together into a couple of text files, and this was it. So 2 workspaces behind it. The one for creating the prompt and submitting the prompt, for getting the image. Here I get the image, which I display back, and then save some results into a spreadsheet like this one. And this simple workspace creates all of the markers here, all the blue circles. And all that functionality, again, it's written by ChatGPT. I also use the same small workspace for creating the gallery, where you can see all the images generated by me and lots of users from the Netherlands, from Sweden, from United Kingdom, from China, and across the world. So you also will get a chance to try it. So lots and lots of images. Some of them are really, really beautiful. Like for example, I always was fond of watercolor, and I can create beautiful watercolors just by expressing myself in words, or just asking OpenAI to do that for me. Really, really beautiful results. So, but what I also learned, that OpenAI has geospatial bias. I wanted to create an image for Eastern Lithuania, where my dad spent his childhood summers. And it looks, well, something like you see on the right. But I was getting, time after time, some desert landscape like you see on the left. So what was going on? Instead of when I send coordinates 55 degrees north, 25 degrees east, ChatGPT was swapping consistently those values for me and saying, you're in Dubai, you're not in Lithuania. Well, it didn't say about Lithuania. It was convinced that I was talking about Dubai, because that's a hot, trendy location, and who would care about Lithuania? I wrote an article about that, so I coined this term geospatial bias, and you can read about that. It's actually quite interesting. You can see my dialogue with ChatGPT, where I try to convince it that I'm talking about a totally different location. So it was quite interesting. So so we published all those scenarios in a single blog post. You can go and see our new community, read our new, check out our new blog if you didn't do that before. So it's a good chance. You will see 12 different scenarios there. You can read more details in LinkedIn articles. And this is it from me.
I'll just share my screen again. We can go through resources that we have. There we go. Okay, so for some closing resources, what we have is obviously if you've been to any FME webinars in the past, nothing's really changed here. So you get access to our ebook. This is a free spatial data for the enterprise dummies book. There's obviously the FME Academy if you're looking to get hands-on with the product. Again, this is a free resource to get you up and running with getting started with data integration in general, with specific areas of the product or specific use cases. There are learning paths and modules that you can follow to cater your learning to your specific use case. So the FME Academy is a fantastic resource, and it was recently updated, so definitely check that out. The community knowledge base is also specifically for targeted use cases as well. We have a lot of resources on the knowledge base, so if you're looking to get started with geodatabase, this is available on both the Academy and the knowledge base. The knowledge base will give you sample data sets, sample workspaces, and give you step-by-step instructions on how to accomplish a specific task, whereas the Academy is more for a learning experience. So literally thousands of resources available to you to help learn how to use FME. And of course, the last one that we have here, you're already aware of those. We do webinars on a very regular basis. They're not necessarily all catered towards AI, but we'll talk about different topics throughout the year. So for next steps, if you are curious or wanting to chat with us about your specific use case, please do get in touch at info@safe.com. Let us know what you're up to, what you're hoping to accomplish with FME, and we can do our best to help guide you on that journey. If you're also looking to get hands-on with the with the FME platform and you only really have 90 minutes, this is where the FME Accelerator is a fantastic resource. So if you don't necessarily have as much time to dedicate towards training, but you're just curious about what the FME platform can do for your organization, check out the FME Accelerator. It's a 90-minute workshop where we give you all the resources and all of the technology that you need to actually get hands-on with the FME platform. Elizabeth, I'll let you take it away with the community badge.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. So if you are a member of our FME community, we have today's badge code as a thank you for joining us. You can redeem that. I'll drop it in the chat. And just a disclaimer, hold on to it for a couple of days as we've just moved over to our brand new FME community. So yeah, you can redeem that in just a couple of. And if you aren't a part of the FME community, definitely check it out. Great place to network with other users alike. And we actually have a webinar coming up, shameless plug, next week that introduces you all to the new FME community and how to make the most of it. So this is a good time. I'll actually drop that in the chat as well if you have yet to register.
Fantastic. Thank you, Elizabeth. And yeah, we had a couple of questions that came in, so I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen at this point. And we can chat about any questions that were interesting from the panel of presenters today. So one that came to mind for me, okay, we can go cameras back on at this point.
Yeah.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Was the one from Oliver recently. He just said that it would be great to be able to use locally running generative AI with FME. Ollama now supports OpenAI API standards, so it would be great if we could kind of test that out in the FME environment. And I think that would be a very interesting one to definitely check out because, well, with the HTTP caller transformer, we have the ability to import from OpenAPI specs. So that would be extremely easy to get up and running with. We would just have to get familiar with how to actually download and stand up that Ollama service. I imagine it's just running off of a local host. But any panelists have thoughts on that one?
I think, Dmitri, have you given it a small spin already to try locally running model? Yeah.
Yeah. So that screenshot that I showed and OpenAI, interpreted for us, that's actually an idea that I got from Oliver Morris, who is right here watching this webinar. It's locally run AI, Ollama, with Lava model, which can analyze images. So in that scenario, so I'm just announcing it slightly. So I just fed it like 70 images and asked to create descriptions, tags, and creative titles, and created a database from that. And again, all the HTML and CSS and JavaScript. Although HTML, CSS, and JavaScript was created with ChatGPT because it's better than Ollama in that respect. Ollama gave me a good answer, but I would have to, to know everything to put that together. With ChatGPT, I just saved everything, and that was it. So yeah, it works quite well. Yeah.
Dmitri, Danielle is asking if Ollama is only on Linux and Mac, or did you run it on Windows? Where did you
I'm
run
on
it?
Windows. Yeah. Well, I installed something which now tells me I'm having Ubuntu,
Okay.
but all I have to do is just to click an icon and it's available. So
The
it
Windows
works really well.
subsystem, the WSL, Windows subsystem for Linux, and then
Yeah,
you can
WSL,
run, yeah. Awesome. Looks like Oliver's going to chime in. I can see him typing. There was an interesting question about how do you go from an image to the descriptions, and I guess, Dmitri, you had commented there that with one of the APIs or one of the models, you can actually feed it images now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't actually send it text. You actually literally send it an image, and it figures it out.
Yeah, and Ollama can do that too. So as I said in that example, I send just images. I don't do anything else, just an image and ask for description.
One of the things that I've been thinking we might want to try doing, FME has a workspace reader inside of it. And what I'm so curious about is if we would use the FME workspace reader and make a simplified description of that workspace using maybe JavaScript, or it's not JavaScript, JSON, and then send that in and say, tell me what this does. How does that compare to just sending it the image? Because for me as a human, I'd rather see the JSON version, but maybe the AI doesn't give a rip and it can just understand the image. Like I couldn't, but that's because I'm, a 1980s trained computing scientist. So I think that would be an interesting experiment to run, but certainly we could skim out interesting things and highlight. For example, one thing I was thinking of is if you use the workspace reader, we could tell it for each transformer if there's any group bys. That is not visible on the picture, but the group bys often are quite useful in understanding what the heck the workspace does. So
yeah, that'd be pretty easy to do with just a basic nested object, obviously, just to kind of assemble transformer name and then nest in the parameters underneath and just
Yes.
feed in the entire workspace that way. It would definitely give it more context as to what each transformer is doing instead of just basing it off of, I imagine it's just basing it off of the name right now.
And unlike a human, it can handle lots of detail, and especially that the Claude model that you're using over on Bedrock. I know that it can handle an enormous prompt. Like that's one of its claims to fame, is just a dramatically huge amount of crap you can throw at it, and it'll figure out what's going on. So we often say this on our webinars: the only limit is your imagination and maybe the time you've got to spend, and that is even more true here.
Yeah, of course, in Workspace, we do have that summary annotation, so we already know how to get all that information out, right? So
That's true.
Very interesting. So what service did you use, Dmitri, to analyze that image of a workspace?
I just created a service for that, so that's it. So
No, what AI service actually analyzed?
it's OpenAI with a specific model.
Okay.
The vision, there's one that has a specific vision option. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you somehow feed it an image as part of its prompt.
Yeah, well, Oliver also created a transformer for that, so I don't even know how it works. So I just send the image, and that
Oliver is the artificial intelligence here.
Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions we want to touch on, our team?
Let's see if there's any others here. I think we've answered all of them. Take a quick look through the chat in case anyone went through there, but I think we've gotten to all of them.
Yeah, it looks like we've touched on all of them in the chat, so that's great. All right, so if you do have any other questions that come to mind, we'll hang on the back end for a couple more minutes here, and we can address those. So keep getting those in if they come to mind. But in the meantime, big thank you to everyone for joining us here today. And of course, our presenters, especially Chris and Dmitri, for all your time preparing this content for us. We really appreciate it. If you do have a brief moment to fill out our webinar survey, we appreciate any feedback. It helps us continue to improve the program. So I'll drop that in the chat again now. Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Christian and Dmitri. And Elizabeth, of course. Yeah, for putting all this in.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.